Right, you lot. And Disney's Star Wars has been a mixed bag. Now that can be agreed. Most fans are in the boat with Disney should have never took over in the first place. However, every now and then the company show that they can still make greatness in this franchise. And that couldn't be more the case with The Mandalorian. Star Wars was at a low point, but Last Jedi was such a polarising film, which made the fandom extremely toxic for a long part, and then Solo of Star Wars story flopped, and Star Wars was just in the worst possible place. I mean, people just weren't excited for The Rise of Skywalker. But then Disney Plus was announced, and many people were actually intrigued by this small, sort of independent show. I think people like the idea that it looked removed from the Skywalkers, the Force, Jedi, Sith, Rebellion, Empire. I think, it looked like this smaller scale underworld show, and I think that felt fresh to people. And many were so excited for it. And when it came out, it truly did deliver, and was an instant smash hit. And now in 2023, with the exception of Andor, no show, live action that is, has actually come close to it. And I thought I would finally talk about the show. Thought it would coincide well, conveniently, with the ending of Season 3. Now for me, Season 3 was the weakest season. However, don't let that tempt you into thinking that I didn't enjoy it, because that is far from the truth. I think it was solid and very much enjoyable, and I think a lot of people were really harsh on this show, and I think that was mostly due with the failures of Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi. But for me, Season 3 was perfectly in line with what came before. I think it did a good job of upping the show's scale, the world, and did a good job with certain characters. Of course, there were things that I didn't like, and I think certain episodes didn't work, but I think the core kind of fear and tone is in line with the first two seasons. And, I'm fine with a bit more of a slower season, because I know that, the first two were so good, and we've already got Season 4 on the way. So I thought to myself, since I'm kind of thinking about Season 3, and everyone's saying how bad it is, I want to know, how does Season 3 square up to the first two seasons? So I thought, why not rank all of the episodes? Now, please keep in mind before I do this, that I don't think any episodes are truly awful, or that bad, really. The worst episodes for me are just a bit filler or unnecessary, or a bit jarring in some cases. Also, if you disagree, I am very much open for discussion. So please don't be discouraged to spout how you feel, and how you would rank the chapters in the comments, because I think from person to person we are going to obviously disagree, and I'm very excited. I'm not going to be including the Book of Boba Fett in this, strictly The Mandalorian. So, if I included the Book of Boba Fett, most episodes would be at the bottom. Right, now coming in 24th, I put Chapter 10, The Passenger. Somewhat had to be here. I'll give this episode this. Visually, it's very creative and very well shot. The direction is very good, and the spiders are terrifying, and the action is fun. But the whole thing just kind of is filler. You have Mando having to take care of this frog lady pretty much paying taxi and her eggs, and then you have this running gag of Grogu continuously eating them, which is very disturbing because we find out later on in the episode that her species are dying. The whole thing is just a bit unnecessary. It just feels like a bit of a stopgap, a bit of a, okay, let's just do this episode. It's frustrating. It doesn't move the story forward. It's not necessarily bad. There's fun moments, but you watch it and you're just a bit underwhelmed. It's just not very impactful. And they even released this episode alongside Chapter 9, so I think even they knew it would be bad. It's just a bit of a mediocre episode. 4 out of 10 for me. For now, with probably the show's strangest episode, Chapter 22, Guns for Hire. Okay, let's start with what they get right here. The episode's ending is brilliant and well earned, as Din gives the bow the dark saber, and it's a massive moment that was well built up and kind of built to. I know people had a problem with it, and it kind of was a bit of a Master of the Elder Wand moment, but I actually kind of liked the loophole, and I think it worked, and it showed, that Bo and Din had grown. And the duo in general just kind of work off each other really well, and there's almost a romantic chemistry there, so I'm surprised they didn't go down that route when you kind of read down through the line. However, how we get there, for me, is the issue. What we get is a weak side quest about a rogue droid. This plot had a lot of potential to give into perceptions and realities of the droid treatment in the galaxy, something that they've kind of touched upon in Solo before, but didn't really go fully on. But that isn't really what they do at all. It's just a bit of a bad side quest, and as the third to last episode, it's just a bit frustrating. Also, I don't think I can talk about this episode without discussing those cameos. Jack Black and Lizzo both a pair. For Lizzo, her acting is unquestionable, and Jack Black is just being Jack Black in Star Wars, And he just feels so out of place. He's not a character, and it's a shame because this same show was able to bring in the likes of Bill Burr onto the show and actually make him, an interesting character. And the villain in it, he's just so useless. The twist is obvious, and it's just such a jarring episode. But I do like the Bo and Din stuff in the ending, so it just doesn't take the bottom spot. Coming in 22nd now, season 3 again with chapter 20, The Foundlings. Now let's begin with the positives again. This episode truly cements Din's Covert into trusting Bo and vowing her and accepting her as one of their own. So I get why they did this episode, and the character development is great. However, what doesn't work for me is this plot. A bird stealing a foundling and a rescue mission. I do not know why these Star Wars shows love rescuing children, but I feel like every single one bloody does it. But the whole plot feels almost Saturday morning cartoon. It feels juvenile. I really expected better. It's like, let's go save the kid from the bird. It feels like something you'd see on like Avengers Assemble or something, not this live action Star Wars show. Now I guess we get to see cool moments like Grogu's training, which is nice, but when the episode finished, I was just scratching my head as to why this is an episode. Yes, the ending and character development is good, and I'm not against a smaller kind of character episode, but the plot line is poor. I would put this bottom if not for the one scene we get to see Grogu rescued by none other than Ahmed Best, which is such a touching moment to a guy who's received absurd levels of hate over the year, and I love that whole thing. But yeah, the episode was disappointing for me, 4.5 out of 10. 21st now, and in the middle of season 1 they decided to do a few little side quests in between the story. But for me a side quest is fine, but it has to kind of either add character development or develop the world or kind of set something up that will come into play. Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, doesn't do either for me. The episode's fine. Mando takes a side quest with this bounty hunter who later double crosses him. The problem with this episode is the bounty hunter lacks personality or presence and is probably Star Wars' most forgettable character. I don't know his name and I refuse to look it up. The guy is also taken down with such ease and doesn't appear as any sort of threat. But the episode does at least introduce us to Fennec Shan, who unfortunately in this episode is actually quite bland and is much better in her kind of later appearances in the show. The highlight is probably the introduction of Peli and always entertaining recurring characters. Overall, it's not offensive enough to be bottom, but it's just such a nothing episode. 4.5 out of 10. 20th now, and I've gone with actually the season 3 opener, chapter 17, The Apostate. For me, it's fine. However, it feels too much like a recap episode, a Book of Boba Fett. It feels like a trailer than an episode. I feel like the cohesion of the story is lacking. I wish chapter 18 was the opener, because this episode doesn't do anything wrong, but when you've only got 8 episodes to do an episode explaining another show and setting up a quest is just... The armor conversation in particular feels like deja vu and was done to much better effect in Book of Boba Fett. However, it gets some stuff right. It sets up the IG-11 arc well, the Bo-Katan bits are good, and I love how Cara Dune is handled. It would have been so easy to just kill her, but leaving it open-ended was the right move. So the episode's fine, but when there's only 8, it's frustrating to dedicate this to something so counterproductive, especially for die-hard fans. So overall, 5 out of 10 for me. 19th now, and I've got to go with season 1, chapter 6, The Prisoner. This worked a lot more than The Gunslinger. Pairing Mando with this contrasting crew, critical with the Mandalorian ways, makes for an interesting dynamic. The prison crew are entertaining and have everything that bounty hunter from The Gunslinger didn't have. The episode does a good job of demonstrating Mando's growth. The guy we knew in chapter 1 would have gone with when the betrayal happens. It's great and it shows the progression of Mando. The fact they were able to make Bill Burr work in Star Wars as well is brilliant, however he is better in his later appearance. Grogu's scenes are also fun, however the only reason it's low is it doesn't do loads to move the story forward, but it's an enjoyable detour and I'd much rather do something like this than saving a bird or Jack Black, so 5.5 out of 10. 18th now, this might be an actual controversial choice, but I've gone for chapter 9, The Marshal. For me, the episode opened perfectly, brilliantly laying out the journey of the series. Get Grogu to his kind. But then we go to Tatooine, we meet a guy in a Boba Fett armor, we have a mystery, we have a plan, everything's going right. But then we go on a big detour on a side quest of this crate dragon, and it's just so weird. The episode was going one way and then shifts, and I enjoy Cobb Vanth and his relationship with Mando's interesting, as for once Mando's friends with someone who won't actually double cross him, but just to take a halt in the obvious journey and the thing they were setting up, it just doesn't work for me. I do enjoy the action, the ending's fun, and giving the Tuscans humanity is one thing that Disney Star Wars actually got right, but I just find the whole thing jarring. However, the ending Boba cameo was great, and it's almost brilliant, but I think they made a misstep for me. 17 now, probably the show's strangest episode. Chapter 19, The Covert. Let's start with the Mando stuff, as all that is brilliant. We get development, and Mando is accepted back into his creed, and Bo is welcomed in as well, and the action in the opening is sensational. But for some inexplainable reason, we get an episode dedicated to Dr. Pershing. Who, you should be asking? Doctor guy, you know, the one who was trying to nick Grogu? Still don't know? Yeah, I don't really either. Well, no one could have guessed that this would have been a plot. However, if we take this episode for what it is so fascinating. I love this depiction of the New Republic. One of the sequel's worst sins was destroying the entire Republic in seconds. However, this episode shows in a way the First Order kind of made a good decision. We see the shambles they're in and their difficulty in running the galaxy. I love all of that. And the episode is very adult and Andor-like. The Doctor worked, and I like seeing a more human side to him and the insanity that plagues him, to the point where when he's betrayed, you kind of feel for the guy, and you genuinely feel bad. However, I was really expecting this to be more important. However, it's only really subtly mentioned by Moff Gideon later, so I feel like to dug all of this into an episode only for it to not really come back was an interesting episode, but as a piece of the puzzle, it's a bit jarring. Coming in 16th now, we have Chapter 2, The Child. This is how you do a filler episode. It's not only a fun side quest, but it also adds development. We needed this episode to slow things down, so Mando can grow to care for Grogu. Because he wouldn't have gone back for him if we didn't do that. The fight is brilliant, truly a blast, and seeing Mando be saved by Grogu really kickstarted the dynamic. Grogu could have been annoying, but they found a way to make him both the eye candy and an important part of the plot. And he is a character in his own right, with expression, not just a MacGuffin. I also absolutely love Quill and his backstory. He works so well and is so entertaining and fun to watch. I just thought this episode did a great job at establishing the foundation of what this show's core is and has to be given. But overall, I just think there's so many great episodes that it does fall down into 16. It didn't do a lot wrong, but again, it is kind of a slow side quest, so it's important. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. 15th now, and I've gone for Chapter 14, The Tragedy. It may not be perfect, especially in the directing front, which is out of line with the rest of the episode. There's just some weird choices there, which really hinders its placement, but the episode is everything. It's kind of a kid's dream. This episode is the best Boba Fett has been since The Empire Strikes Back. He's badass, cold, and truly resembles that bounty hunter we knew all those years ago. The Razor Quest destruction is so well done and shocking. The episode is just a joy from start to finish. It's short, but it's jam-packed. There are repercussions and mistakes, and Grogu gets taken. My problem is that Stormtroopers again are useless, and it's a shame that Stormtroopers is still a joke even in new Star Wars, but the Dark Troopers are truly epic, and it almost feels like a kid with action figures in a good way. I just love it. 6 out of 10. 14th now, with Season 1's final filler, Chapter 4, The Sanctuary. I think after the extreme action-packed Chapter 3, to bring the deal to a small village was a really clever choice. Yes, the plot is a classic kind of nature versus machine story, but it works here. Cara Dune is great and challenges Mando in a good way, and Mando is hit with a genuine decision, as for seconds he considers throwing it all away. I love seeing Mando challenge, and we see how happy Grogu really is, and putting him in this situation makes a great story then. I also think this is a key step in Mando's growth, so as a person, so as a filler it does everything right, and over time this one's only got better for me. 6 out of 10. 13th now, I've gone with Chapter 24, The Return. This episode is odd. It feels like a show finale. It's like the perfect happy ending, but that isn't true. We know we have a 4th season and a crossover movie. If you told me this was how The Mandalorian ended, I think I'd be content with that. But it fails to paint a path to move forward, apart from our knowledge that Thrawn is going to be out there. Also, as good as the ending is, I find it odd how quickly Bo and Din go their different ways despite all the build-up their relationship had. Especially when they team up to take down Gilead. Well, they should have. At least seeing Grogu saving the day was great. Actually, like, there wasn't a necessary cameo. People thought that maybe Boba Fett could show up or someone else, but I kind of like that it was stuck to them. I love Axe's kind of great redemption, and the ending is sweet and deserved. Gideon does feel off, and I really hope he's gone now, as he's kind of run his course for me as a villain, but it does feel like a different character. Also, the Praetorian Guards are once again useless, so that's nothing new for this. So overall, it's a good finale to a series, but doesn't make me excited for the next chapter. 6 out of 10. 12th now with a fun one. Episode 12, The Siege. This episode is a good side quest. We get to catch up with the co-stars of Season 1. And we get teasers for the future. It's really entertaining. Carl Weathers got to direct, and I was beyond impressed with what he did with the action. The action's brilliant, we get some fun chase scene, and the mystery of cloning is well executed. There's not much to say, it's just a solid 6.5 out of 10, I just have fun with it. 11th now, and we're now into 7 out of 10 territory. Now with Chapter 11, The Heiress. After a lackluster start, this really gets Season 2 on the map, as we get the introduction to Bo-Katan. And it's so interesting, the way that her and Mando go toe to toe. It works so well and explains two of the Season 1's biggest mystery, the Darksaber, and why Mando keeps his helmet on. Katie translates her character brilliantly into live action. I just enjoy seeing the banter and rapport they have, and the understand reach at the end is brilliant. However, what brings it down to me is the plot is a bit empty, as we see the Mando's team to take a ship and kind of a you do something for me, I'll do something for you plotline, which, you know, the episode is kind of carried by the Bo-Katan cameo, and if you remove that, it's fine, but it's not incredible. Into the top 10 now with Chapter 1, The Mandalorian. This episode was so important in defining what the show was. I like how everything about Mando is not spelled out to us, but we get the idea and we learn the fundamentals of him, like how he doesn't like droids. The tone is perfectly set. We know where we are in the galaxy. We know the time period. It's important. Mando is ruthless at this point, and it's so clear. I love the client and speech, and I love IG-11 as this character. Mando's portrayal to him is brilliant. But the best thing this episode did was the Grogu reveal. Talk about how to break the internet. It would have been so easy to just put him in the trailer, but the secret was so well kept. I'll never forget when I first saw that reveal. It was truly a moment. This had to be good. People wouldn't have come back. But what The Mandalorian did was defined it. And we knew we were truly in for a brilliant episode. Single digits now. In 12th I've got Chapter 13, The Jedi. I was terrified with the announcement of Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. Ahsoka is my favourite Star Wars character, and I would have been devastated if she was butchered on the big screen. Especially considering for many this would have been their first introduction to her. I was also mixed with the decision to not bring Ashley and to recast in the same vein what they did with Katie Sackhoff, but however, all fear was removed when it came to light, as it really worked. Rosario captures the character, not only physically but in spirit, and seeing her starting to return to the Force is great at this point. You feel her brokenness is felt, and you get why she won't train Grogu. I also love her little fight with Mando she has. It's brilliant. I also do like the plot, as Mando helps to free a city and gain a cool weapon along the way. This episode really was excellent, and the full name drop was absolutely chilling. Overall, such a great episode, and some others 8 better, 7 out of 10. 8th was Chapter 18, The Minds of Mandalore. For me, this is the real season opener. I love the stakes, I love the visuals here, it's scary, it's graphic, and the sad reality of what Mandalore has become. Bo and Mando's love-hate relationship here. The action is epic, and the fact Bo has to save Mando twice couldn't be a better visual representation of who this season's main character is. But I love the stakes present, and seeing Grogu travel the galaxy alone is very Star Wars. I like how we slowly develop Bo and her beliefs start to resurface. Slowly overall is great, 7 out of 10. 7 with Season 3 again, and The Pirate. This episode is loaded, but everything just worked. I have to shout out Paz Vizsla as a character. His development in this episode, finding protecting Mando, is just brilliant. And I love that kind of bait and switch. It was so greatly done. I love we see this crew develop to do something for someone else. The Republic side is also great. And by the way, that Zeb actually looks great. The one-time CGI doesn't look shit in Star Wars. It looks fantastic. The pirates pose a good, genuine threat and result in one of the strongest action scenes of the whole show. I like the humanity that's given to Navarro, and Din's insistence to help Greaves just shows how far he'd come from the beginning. The action is just a brilliant spectacle, and has that kid with action figure feel to it again, and the ending is great as the armourer comes to the sense they need other clans. I love the mother-daughter relationship between the armourer and Bo, and it feels so earnest and authentic. Overall, blast of an episode, completely jam-packed and a great use of time, 7.5 out of 10. Alright, 6th now, and just missing out on a place in the top 5 with Chapter 7, The Reckoning. This episode is so important. As the team is fully established, it feels so thematic as all the people we've met along the way are brought together. We also get redemption for Grief and IG-11 as, for Grief he realises what Grogu really is. And IG-11, of course, is reprogrammed, and I love that sequence, it's just brilliant, and we get a good idea for who Quill is as well. I love the introduction to Gideon, and the action is so on point, but my god, the death of Quill is horrifying. The music, the directing, it's a death that really hits you. It's excellent story, and his death has to be on par with 99 for most tragic Star Wars death, but everything just worked here, and the client's death works well, and it needed to happen. The only reason it doesn't get top 5 is because how good the next episode was. But because in a way it's even more impressive, considering the checklist it had, but overall brilliant episode. 8 out of 10. Starting off the top 5 now, starting off with the best entry of Season 3, Chapter 3, The Spies. This had everything: action, tragedy, tease in the future. Firstly, Grogu as a droid, I just love it. Black Series, get that figure done now. But anyway, I love seeing the clans come together and the inevitable fights they have. But eventually we see them rejoice through Bo-Katan. It was one of the things I hoped the show did, and they knocked it out of the park on that front. Bo showing vulnerability and coming clean, answering one of the show's big questions: how did Gideon get that dark saber? In a moment that shows how far the once coward has progressed to, and it shows that, how she's grown into person, that the person who did what she did is not that girl anymore, and I think that's such a powerful scene. And it feels so thematic. The reveal of Gideon is sensational, and the mystery is so well done. I love Thrawn's name drop as well. And just wow, no words, and Paz Vizsla lays down his life for the greater good. I don't think a character could have gone out in a better way than Paz Vizsla. But chilled, it kills me. And for 5 seconds, the Praetorian Guards actually looked confident, but of course it wasn't going to last. Everyone who didn't like this season, look at this episode. This is peak Star Wars and really deserves a 9 out of 10. 4th now, with the show's most underrated episode by far, Chapter 15, The Believer. This episode is perfect. Other episodes in Season 2 kind of had the fun factor of like, Ahsoka's in this episode, Bo-Katan's in this episode, Boba Fett's in this episode. But this episode is just so well written. We get the return of Bill Burr's Mixed Mayfield, and this episode really hollows in on the black and whiteness of Star Wars, and what starts as a simple mission turns into a question of morality and meaning, and Mix really challenges Mando's code, and makes him think in kind of a fascinating manner. And also we see Mando remove his helmet as we see what saving Grogu truly means to him. And that scene is so well done. Such a rich episode in subtext and themes, and I just want to give it the credit it deserves. Absolutely brilliant episode. 9 out of 10. We're kicking off the top 3 now with Chapter 8, Redemption. What a final. Taika Waititi directed this episode, and his flavour and style is instantly got. And it works. This episode is the episode that gives us Mando's backstory. You finally see the human side to him and find out his hatred for droids and the pain he went through during the Clone Wars. And that comes full circle as IG-11 finally earns his trust as truly grows, only for IG-11 to sacrifice himself in a chilling moment. I also love the Armorer's moment to be absolutely completely badass. The stakes are brilliant, but nothing beats that ending as Moff Gideon reveals the Darksaber, as I had to explain to everyone who's not seen the Clone Wars what the bloody Darksaber was. That was funny. Wow, this show really stuck the landing. And then some. Another 9 out of 10. The runner-up for me may surprise you, but the show's most important episode for me is Chapter 3, The Sin. This episode sees Mando giving Grogu to Dr. Person, only to regret and go back for Grogu. Not only did Mando get his best gold armor here, but we see Mando risk his creed in a big moment. This episode made the show. I still remember watching it and just being blown away, and seeing the devastation faced by the Mandalorians by Grief's orders is horrifying. But honestly, what a powerful episode. This is everything the show should be, and more. 9.5 out of 10. It's one better. For me, there's only one number one. You knew it would be here. Nothing can beat Luke Skywalker obliterating the Dark Trooper. Nothing beats Mando's struggle to be a Dark Trooper. Nothing beats that chilling Moff Gideon speech, only for one X-Wing to arrive. This is Star Wars. It has to be Chapter 16, The Rescue. Everything works. The action, seeing the team of girls work together, and it's not some blatant MCU feminism. I love Gideon. He's genuinely threatened, even after defeat the Darksaber conflict. Wow, the Dark Troopers are set up as such a horrifying threat, which makes Luke's destruction of them even more badass. But truly, nothing could beat that goodbye scene. This is a great conclusion to this first 2-season arc. I do stand the notion that Grogu's exit should have been here, and they dropped the ball on that front. I'm not going to give it as 10 out of 10. Probably someone should have died, and the lack of Boba Fett is disappointing, but honestly, what a finale. 9.5 out of 10. So what have we learned? That The Mandalorian is Star Wars and the future, and that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau need to be given the helm. And yeah, it's had a few missteps, but the show was sensational overall. And yes, in all 3 seasons. So that was my ranking of The Mandalorian. Coming up, I've got a commentary video, and I'm going to be doing... I've got another song, Warn You, and, of course, I've got my ranking of Ed Sheeran's songs. But we got the album coming soon, so we're going to have a lot of songs this summer. It's going to be really exciting. So yeah, goodbye.